You're watching a Highwire Media podcast. This is one of those movies that's been sitting on my IMDb watch list for a very long time, and finally I've decided to jump in and review it. Harold Crick is an IRS agent, the United States badass yet boring title for their tax auditors. Nasty, slimy people that believe they are doing the right thing to pave roads and pay for schools. Or at least that's what my own preconceived notions about these kinds of people were. Turns out one such agent is far more methodical and lonely in their everyday life than I could have possibly imagined. The 3-minute long opening segment of this movie, which could easily been an extended trailer for this film, explains this. Emma Thompson's delicious narration could easily be mistaken for simple guidance on how and why our protagonist's daily routine has this geometric composite, littered throughout with so much emphasis placed on Harold's wristwatch too. It would be easy to presume that it's for some significance, as though it held the secret to Harold's inherent superpower. Most of this turns out to be a complete red herring. In almost Groundhog Day style, the next day begins with a near repeat of how the first day began, only this time, Harold is able to hear the narrator's voice, seemingly coming from within his own home. The playful way that the puppet started to see its own strings was remarkably humorous. The idea that people would rely on Harold for fast arithmetic instead of just using a calculator not only appears ridiculous on the surface, but having that accepted norm challenged by Harold developing an awareness of his routine makes the audience realize the farce that he endures on a daily basis. The control he had over his life through calculation and repetition has now been broken, allowing us, the audience, to be put into his shoes. Harold's solace from his insanity is to be found inside this bright, white filing room where he confides to his colleague about his suspicions he's a robot. Regrettably, Harold is, like his daily existence, alone in his experience. His auditing services require him to visit a bakery, where he meets Anna Pascal, a character who opposes paying the full amount of tax she owes the government. The reminder that Americans are legally obligated to pay for a military that at best provides employment and at worst arbitrarily destroys things still rings true today. I appreciated the music choice of Death or Glory by The Clash playing in the background of the bakery, further personalizing this Anna character as a teasing rebel. Running a business is stressful enough as it is, and to have to pay a man in a sharp suit come along with the full force of the American bureaucracy behind him to disrupt said business, well, it incites a riot. Going into this film, I was weary of Harold Crick's portrayal being kind of overwritten by Ferrell's typically obnoxious and loud ways. Compliments should definitely be paid to him for his performance in this film. However, it seems clear from Will Ferrell's restrained performance that this is not the first time his character has had to hear the justifications of people he has been sent to audit. Having said that, yes, this is about as Will Ferrell as his performance gets, and it works well to illustrate his character's ever-growing frustration and the bizarre situation he finds himself enveloped in. The stereotypical comedy actor waiting for his chance to be in a drama mirrors that of his character as he too yearns to break free of his reputation. We are shown the voiceover's owner, Karen Eiffel, to be standing on the brink of her own demise, or at least she's thinking about it, as part of her attempts to rationalize killing off her fictional character, Harold Crick. Yes, the man we spent 10 minutes observing is in fact the product of Eiffel's imagination, with the narration being the words of her opening chapters. I don't know how to kill Harold Crick. In my opinion, this reveal happens far too early in the film. Not even 10% of its runtime elapses before we are fed this information. It didn't give us enough time with Harold to capitalize on the ensuing deep disequilibrium. Had the narrator introduced the idea of his death before their identity was revealed, I feel that a moment like this would have justified Harold's screaming, further than helping to get Will Ferrell fans to buy tickets for this film. Adding insult to injury, the official trailer for Stranger Than Fiction gives away Harold Crick's identity as a fictional character as an additional selling point. It would have been better for the audience to learn why the film is named such as it is from the events contained within. This issue continues into the scene where Harold returns home, attempting to capture the attention of the voice. Knowing that he is a fictional character disregards any other possibility for an explanation for his erratic behavior. The viewer cannot speculate on the source of his madness. Has, for example, his reputation and subsequent isolation driven him to this point? We already have the answer. Thankfully, the real events of the film involving Karen as an author with writer's block were frankly hilarious. Accompanied by her publisher's assistant Penny, played by Queen Latifah, Thompson does a great job at delivering her arrogant and I'll do it myself attitude, observed by her rejection of her publisher's life-affirming advice. Penny urges Eiffel to take care of herself, which in turn helps Eiffel to develop a fondness for the character she's responsible for killing. The scenes with these two are sadly few and far between. I found them to be more memorable and punchy than those with Ferrell and his literary mentor, Professor Hilbert. I appreciated the way that the story initially entertained the possibility of Harold having schizophrenia. We find this not just from the dialogue, but also from this shot of him reflected on a table, giving him a second head. The wild goose chase of advice finally leads him to the previously mentioned caffeine-addicted literature professor portrayed by Dustin Hoffman. Were it not for the delightfully author-like description of his death that he heard from the voice, the power of the voice's words was enough to captivate Hilbert to examine Harold further, before his death catches up with him. The following scene shows another chance meeting between Anna and Harold, where the pair show a rather forgiving side to each other. Even Harold seems to have developed a sense of humor, despite having no inclination towards it prior. I would have expected the pair to have been far colder to each other in this scene, and yet this is where the recognition of Harold Crick's fictionality plays heavily into my forgiveness of their forced and cheesy romance. Had it not been for this revelation that Harold was Eiffel's imaginative creation, I may have simply turned up my nose at this point and possibly even switched off the film. It would have been more appropriate for the film to have introduced Karen and her assistant here to prevent such potential disregard from cynical viewers such as myself. Then again, I don't think movie producers back in 2006 were concerned that their movies would be picked apart and analyzed from YouTubers such as myself. The movie has a mildly amusing scene with Hilbert and Harold narrowing down what fictional stories he's definitely not a character in. They simplify the exercise by trying to place Harold's life story into a tragedy or a comedy. This is probably the best example of the film examining the theme of metafiction, as it takes a look introspectively at precise what genre this film falls under. I appreciated that Hilbert's advice to Harold was simply to live as though life was a comedy. These lines appear more as advice on how the audience can live a good life, as laughter is definitely the best medicine. Harold then begins his auditing of Anna's bakery, which involves a simplistic montage of him trying to be a nice guy despite his rather taxing task. I did like that Harold was cynical enough to believe Anna was just trying to escape her debt by making a batch of cookies for him. His feeble attempts to rectify this problem by offering to pay for the cookies lumps up the tragedy even further. The implication of the pair's relationship could result in him losing his job, the only thing of value he seems to possess. Without a job at the IRS, who is Harold Crick? With a feeling that doing nothing will result in tragedy, Harold's task for the next day is to simply stay at home and do nothing. The TV's rather nihilistic narration of nature tickles the idea of fate, and all the footage on the TV of predators snapping up their prey, only for the giant jaws of a crane to smash into Harold's apartment, it all creates juicy parallels with his own foretold death. This moment just screams dreams to me, that Harold literally cannot escape the jaws of fate. It plays off as funny as well, further evidence that this tale isn't quite as tragedy he believes it to be. He just can't see it like we can. Only when Harold decides to live the life he wants to does the narrating voice return. For one thing, he lets go of his concerns about finding a new apartment and moves in with his only friend, Dave. What an underdeveloped character he winds up being. Not once does he ask what progress Harold has made in finding a new place. Happy for Harold to just play out his midlife crisis inside his own apartment day after day. Apparently the only thing Dave wants is go to space camp, displaying that he may have been Buster Bluth in disguise the whole time. Harold uses up all that unused vacation time to walk the streets, watch Monty Python's The Meaning of Life, and finally pursue Anna in a non-professional capacity by buying her flowers. Meanwhile, Karen imagines more ways to kill off Harold. I love the disgusting way she puts out her cigarettes in saliva-ridden tissues, but I love more about her scene in the hospital seeking out those on death's door. It might have been easier for her to visit some prisoners on death row, but her insensitivity towards this nurse created some great humor. The striped blue shirt she continuously wears throughout the film makes it look as though she's the one who belongs in the hospital. The movie hits peak intrigue, however, once the lines between reality and fiction start to blur. Harold hears the voice of his narrator on Hilbert's TV, an interview with Karen from 10 years prior. She doesn't mention Harold Crick at this point, but given how it's taken her 10 years to write this book, it's no surprise she's so reluctantly to reluctant to kill him off. The story reaches its zenith by seeing the writings of Eiffel correlating magically with reality. The combination of Harold's forceful denial of his destiny and her proclivity towards killing off her main character gives her a shocking revelation, where Thompson's performance truly shines. Eiffel's disbelief transforms into fear as she is forced to face the possibility that the plot of her story is no longer at the mercy of her fingertips. That is, until Herbert reaches the manuscript of Death and Taxes, and the truth of the inevitable becomes clear to Harold. Regardless of what has or hasn't been written, he will die, as does every other human being. Him being a fictional character doesn't make him an exception to this fact. The moral quandary that his presence of a book requiring the death of a real, breathtaking human being for it to be a masterpiece is quite the dilemma. It's in this scene that I can pay the highest compliments to Will Ferrell's performance. His ability to cry convincingly on camera with red eyes and a runny nose created a really touching scene between the two main actors. Harold completes a very small bucket list of to-dos before his inevitable demise and then decides to walk in front of a bus to save a child. It's here that the small interludes strewn throughout the film that may have been perceived as flashbacks to Harold's past were actually the elements that led to Harold's death. Unfortunately, his death is filmed really badly. We see an entire path to the left is available to this child, yet he instead chooses to go on the road for some reason. Once this happens, Harold leaps into the road to pull him out. With the aid of this gentleman, they pull him back towards the curb, and then somehow Harold gets hit by a bus. The driver definitely would have seen the commotion from this distance just as easily as I can see her sitting in the driver's seat. Worse still, she is driving at a reasonably slow speed in these two shots, and then it's shown that she speeds up here. Wouldn't she be slowing down anyway to pick up this horde of people? No reasoning for why this would happen is ever included from the limited snippets of footage we see of the driver prior to this moment. The worst part of all was the stupendous amount of cuts that were made to stitch together the shoddy death in an attempt to make it look realistic. The only compliment I can pay to this sequence was when they cut back to Eiffel attempting to light a cigarette. The flame of Harold Crick's life has simply gone out. With this idea metaphorically symbolized by Eiffel's lighter running dry, they even cut to a shot of the typewriter hinting at the possibility of Harold not quite being dead yet. Now it should be acknowledged that a description of such events in book form might have made this death more believable, but I'm not too convinced it would. I still feel like the rug gets pulled out from under me by the story's decision to turn the tables and save Harold's life. He is awoken in a hospital by the least credible doctor ever put to screen. And I thought it was rather fitting that the watch, which boasted of such significance from the offset of the movie, would be the very thing that saved Harold from his death. It's definitely a stretch to believe, but a bigger stretch was that Harold's next of kin wasn't contacted. Somehow, Anna showed up to visit him. It has a rather simplistic conclusion that the small and simple things in life are what keep us alive, or more specifically, stop us from deliberately stepping into oncoming traffic. As much as this all comes off as contrivance, at least it is acknowledged in the following scene, where Hilbert describes the sum total of the story as being okay. And that's precisely what this movie is on a surface level analysis, but there is definitely more going on in this film than meets the eye. I appreciated that there wasn't an explanation as to how Harold Crick went from being fictional to real. This probably would have been defeated the whole strange element from Stranger Than Fiction. Otherwise, it's a decent film, enjoyable, and I give it a 7 out of 10. Now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What did you think of Stranger Than Fiction? Have you watched it? How would you rank it? And of course, give it a thumbs up if you like our videos. Hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the bell notification to be notified of future videos. And hit that. And if you want to support the channel, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/cinemagold. As always, thank you so much for watching and listening. We will see you next time.